I'm recording here. We're ready to go. Laura.
Hi and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. Today's conversation with my two amazing teachers is all about what is ceremony. Today we have with us teacher number one in box number one. We have Helmut Warner Whitaker, Katasi Shaman, Kalakanasia. And then we have the amazing Kay Cordell Whitaker, teacher. Well, maybe I should have made her teacher number one and you teacher number two. But we have Kay, the most amazing woman I personally know. She is the keeper of the Katasi tradition in our modern world. Kalakanasia, our elder, a weaver of webs, and just freaking fantastic. And Helmut and I today will be hosting her, having a conversation about what is ceremony? Why is ceremony such a vital part of all ancient traditions around the world? What it can bring actually to our life? What does it offer for growth and healing in our lives? And how we can bring it back to modern lives? I'm really excited about this one, Kay. I mentioned to you earlier, I have preconceived ideas on all of our conversations, where they're going to go. And my mind is always blown. They go way bigger than I ever thought of. But honestly, I've never thought of ceremony being important. I love community and I love gatherings, but I'm really excited to hear your conversation or your sharing on the importance of it. And Helmut, just to point you out, you had recently said too that ceremony was one of the things that saved your life, and directed. And so I really am curious how this all weaves in. Good morning, Anna. So I'll let you take it away. I'm very excited.
Which of us, me or Helmut?
I don't know, Helmut. I was thinking Kay, but unless you want to say anything else, Helmut, before Kay starts.
No, I think what you described covers it for what I said about ceremony, and it was a really huge part of my journey, and still is, and always will be. But let's Kay take it away.
Oh, well, hello everybody. And it's always such a delight. It's so much fun, and such an incredible honor to be able to be here and talk to you about things like this. So, ceremony, it's one of my most favorite things in life. And I was always really, really intrigued as a kid, looking at primitive cultures, ancient cultures, and they had these ceremonies that they did, sometimes referred to by people as a ritual. I just always knew there was something special in there. And I couldn't put my finger on it. I really didn't have any idea about why, but it just felt good. The idea of it felt good. The cultural memories of it felt special. In the last, probably several hundred years, maybe more, probably for our Judeo-Christian Muslim part of our human race, probably a lot more, maybe a couple thousand years. The depths of ritual just got squeezed out of the culture. And now for our modern culture, that's the norm. Real ceremony doesn't exist. People don't really understand that there is such a thing. When we hear about ceremony, it's like somebody's school graduation ceremony, or a ceremony to honor something that they have done, to get a medal from the armed services for things that they did, an award, so to speak, award ceremony. And the word has been diminished. It's been severely diminished in our culture. And so for most of us, we've just lost it. We've lost what it really is. And with the indigenous cultures, the ancient cultures, and most certainly the ones I know the best, the Peruvian Katasi culture and the pre-dynastic Egyptian culture, ceremony was a big thing. It was really big. It was really important. And it was very serious. And it involved, very often, a lot of preparation. Not just preparation like getting the space that you're going to use all clean and ready and set up for it, or making the food for a feast, for a ceremony. Certainly there's those parts of things, but when we, from the indigenous ancient cultures, talk about ceremony and preparing, it means preparing each individual, preparing from the inside, getting yourself ready in a mental, emotional, physical, and especially a spiritual level. Sometimes these preparations can take a whole year. Sometimes for some of these things, it could be many years of just a continuous preparation, a building of things, a building of learning, working on oneself to clean out all of the old stuff. Even in those ancient cultures, pre-dynastic, the really old indigenous cultures, people still have this propensity towards developing what we call masks, our learned behaviors from the culture, from family, the beliefs, the blind beliefs that are so often get collected within a culture and passed down. And for these really important, big, serious ceremonies, it's all about each individual from that heart level, from the spiritual level, which is the depths of all things. It is to untie ourselves, unplug ourselves from any kind of blind beliefs, any kind of automatic behaviors, automatic reactions, any level of falling asleep, as we would say in Katasi. Falling asleep is losing track of your conscious awareness and just slipping into a really easy, pre-made, preset set of ideas, cultural ways, blind beliefs. and living from there, and creating the box that you live in. Their boxes were a lot smaller than the boxes that we make today. In our modern culture today, we're making some really, really giant, very thick-walled, no window boxes out of our culturalization and out of our blind beliefs. All these automatic behaviors that we learn to react automatically. When we do that, we're living inside a fake thing. It's a little world. It's a fake world that we've made with walls. And we don't see past the walls. We don't see what's really there. We don't even see the reality of our own selves because we're too busy having our attention locked into the distractions of the culture and the blind beliefs. So when we have ceremony, real ceremony, the old way, it has to involve physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, all the levels of our being to the fullest of our abilities, and to involve our awareness, our conscious, focused awareness to the best of our abilities. So to prepare, we're learning more and more about how to do that. How do we discover what our box is? How do we discover what our blind beliefs are? How do we discover what all the stuff from our culture is that nobody else outside of our culture has those ideas and those thoughts, those ways of being and believing and reacting? Their box is totally different. So what's outside our box? What is the real world, and what is the real us? It's so what we really are, what we're hiding from ourselves, especially in our modern culture. We go to such great lengths to hide this. We're hiding who and what we really are. Everything about who we are and what are we? When we're in the box, we have all these canned answers. They're all made up and they're all pretend and they don't make any sense. And we're told that that's real and told to believe them, and so we do. And we just lead our whole lives believing these made up things, these lies about who we are and what we are. We learned in our modern culture how to think of ourselves as a label. We're big on labels. We really like labels in our culture. And so we like to label everything, and we label ourselves, and we come to identify with our labels, and we come to identify with actions that we do or have done. We come to identify with particular groups that we might be part of, but that isn't who we actually are, and it's not what we actually are. In the Katasi tradition, the who and what we are, we call our song. It's a poetic reference, poetic term to describe the endlessness and this endless beauty, and like a song, like a melody, like music that just keeps playing and going and living and becoming more and new and different all the time. A song, a symphony. That makes a whole lot more sense. It's a metaphorical picture of who and what we are as an entity. Discovering who and what we are as an entity is the most important thing in our existence as a human being. To explore who and what we really are. And to create. To just keep being and experiencing and creating from this experience and knowledge of our song. Is who and what we are. We're an entity. Energetic, the spiritual level, mental level, emotional level. And when we decide to incarnate in a physical body in 3D time space and be matter and run around in the matter world, then we have a physical component. We are all of those things. And they have so much aliveness. And it's so vast. Our song, as they teach in Katasi, our song is very vast, huge. Huge, enormous, vast, and we're ancient. We're so ancient, there is no way to describe how old we actually are. Countless, eternal. Essentially, we're eternal. Ancient, vast, eternal, brilliant, creative, wondrous, very, very alive. And we are connected to all the other things, all the other songs that are also very, very alive and beautiful and ancient and vast and creative, and all in their own way, also different. We're created in an extremely deep and intimate way. And this part of us, this connectedness, it's such a big piece of who and what we are. It's such a big piece of our connectedness, of our experience of existence, our aliveness. In this connectedness, we're sharing knowledge, all kinds of knowledge that you can't even imagine. Everything that's happening everywhere, every kind of information, every kind of experience that everything else is having. The knowledge that comes from that, the creations that come from that, all that creativity and aliveness, this dance. We're all doing this dance and we're doing it together. We're creating together. And we're experiencing it all. When we're in the box, we're not paying any attention to any of it. We don't know that it exists because we work so hard to not pay attention to any of it. But when you make a crack in the box and you can see out and you can feel out, wow, there it is. There it is. And you start to feel that that's you too. That's the way you are. That's your song. It's their songs. They're all connected. They're all sharing. And in this connectedness, there's a whole field of connectedness. Some people call it, some of these indigenous peoples call it a field of awareness, a field of consciousness, a field of aliveness, a field of creativity, co-creativity. All of it's accurate. It's all accurate. Nature, we look outside, we go outside, and we're in nature. We're, there's the ground, the dirt, real dirt, real rocks, and plants and trees, and the air, the sky, all animals that are there, big and small, even the tiny annoying ones that might even sting you. They're all part of creation. They're all part of all of this aliveness. They're so very, very, very alive and intelligent and creative. And their song, each one is a song. And in that metaphorical sense, their song is singing all the time and dancing together and sharing. And in this field is this, like an ocean. It's like an endless ocean of energy, all kinds of energies, and aliveness and thought and consciousness. And all the songs, all the beings are part of it and interacting with it and contributing. And that's how this communication is sent back and forth. We're giving this information and energies out, and this love is part of it. And we're receiving it all the time. And there's currents in this field. Right now, some of the biggest currents that we can experience, we notice and experience in the field, in our local part of the field, are these, for lack of a better word, cosmic waves. Huge, huge, huge cosmic waves, tsunamis of all kinds of energies, particles, information, love, unconditional love, absolute unconditional love, tsunamis of it, sweeping through our part of our galaxy, our solar system, our planet, through us. And even when we're asleep, we can't hide from that in our box. We can pretend that we're not noticing any of it and try to be ignorant of it, but it still touches us. It still sinks into us on all levels, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. It's sinking in. It's becoming part of our own being, part of our consciousness. And it's informing us, educating us, changing us, allowing us to raise our consciousness, and allowing us to notice there's something outside the box, helping us to be inspired to get out of our personal little box and our cultural box and see what this all is, to feel it, to experience it. That's what we're here for. That's what we come into a physical life for, is to experience all the things that is offered in a physical reality, which includes being on a planet like this at a time when these tsunamic waves of consciousness and aliveness and change and evolution and with all this love is flooding our being and our space and our field and our awareness, our lives. It's changing everything. It's changing the vibrations of our planet and everything on it, including us. These kinds of awarenesses and experiences are what the indigenous peoples and the ancients felt were the most important things in life, in physical life, is to learn how to be aware of these things, to explore them, to experience them with everything that we have, everything that we are. Experience as much as we possibly can and learn and understand more and more and more about what all of this is. All of these things of a spiritual nature, our song, the field, the connectedness, these tsunami waves of this magnificent brilliance and beauty and aliveness, healing, the learning, exploring, the depths of the experiencing of that. So when they talk about ceremony, they talk about learning more about what all these things, these spiritual things are. And how does that relate to our emotional being and our mental being and our physical being? Our spiritual self, each part of ourselves, they're woven in together. They sync, they meld together. They work together. They're designed to work together, to experience together. So that when we are stepping out into nature and we're experiencing those songs and the life forms around us and the field, their field of connectedness and awareness that's there, and all that beauty and the exchange, the interchange of things, we're feeling it on the spiritual level. But at the same time, we're feeling it on an emotional level, because the emotional part of ourselves is not a separate thing from the spiritual part of ourselves. It's all part. It's all woven together. We experience spiritual level things. We tend to at certain awareness levels of consciousness. And then we think when we're experiencing something emotional that it is a different thing, that it somehow can be separated out, or perhaps it's not as important, or it's not as deep, it's not as profound, it's not as teaching. And that's not true. Nothing could be farther from the truth, because our emotions are part of the whole depth of the spiritual experience. The deeper, the bigger, the more profound that we experience something emotionally, that's part of our spiritual experience. Same with the mental, even the linear mind. It has its little narrow box and range of things that it does and works in, but it can experience these things too in its own way. And our physical self, every cell, every molecule, every atom can experience the emotions. It can experience what's going on in the mind. It can experience everything that's going on in the spiritual part of our being. They're designed to work together. There's a story that the Whitakers used to like to talk about, and I have experienced this myself. Especially when I was first studying with them, and they'd point these things out and help me tune in to notice these things in myself and in others. And then ever since, just experiencing them more and more and deeper and deeper. They pointed out that little kids, tiny, definitely under 5 years old, usually 3 or under, before they have started in our modern culture to take on the cultural ideas and expectations and ways of being and ways of conducting our own inner experience and restricting it in culturalization. As we go to sleep, as the Whitakers would say, we're building that box. We're stopping to notice the aliveness of things, our connectedness. When we're really little, we're still awake. We haven't built all those boxes. We're starting to learn about that stuff. And when we're born, we are awake, and we're remembering quite a bit of stuff from our song, from our past lives, from our past existences, understanding about all those things. So as a little kid, we're big enough to start running, say 1.5, 2, and we can toddle and run around and get all excited, and we're playing our games and having so much fun. They're experiencing things on all those 4 levels. We talk about them with words like levels, which tends to talk about them as though they're divided somehow. But they're not. They're not divided at all. It's quite one thing, quite integrated. And there's the little physical body running back and forth through the room, through the house, or outside, very excited, and they're yelling and they're waving arms, and maybe somebody's got toys or balls, or there's some dog or something that they're playing with, and their whole auric field is big compared to their physical body. It's way out, and it's very plump, kind of sphere, ball-shaped or egg-shaped, kind of long, but very plump and full. And it goes way above the head, and it goes way out the side of the body and in all directions, and below the feet down into the earth. And all these colors, if you could see the aura and see all the levels of that energy field, the aura, there's all these colors and all this energy, and it's moving and jumping, and there's sparks and sparklers, and it's just going all over the place. And the more excited they get, the more there is. And as they're running, they're leaving a trail of these dancing colors with all the sparklers and everything. They're using all parts of themselves. They are having the experience of playing and being excited and having fun and running, and they're experiencing it on all different levels. So we notice the physical, because that's the obvious. And most people in our culture, that's all they're looking at. It's all they're looking at, and they aren't reaching out to feel or experience anything else. But if you could tune in enough, the frequencies are different for the physical and for the emotional and for the mental and for the spiritual. There's different frequencies happening there. And so you could see with all these different kind of colors and the feeling of the activity, and it's going all over, every which way. They are experiencing all of it all at once. All at once. Just kind of picture that, try to feel that for a minute. They're experiencing it all at once through all levels of their being. And it's very beautiful, it's very exciting. Now, as we grow older, we learn to suck a lot of that in, to diminish it, keep it quiet. We learn how to take that big fluffy outer edge of our auric field and squish it really close to our body, all over. And especially down at the feet, we'll even squish it so that we pull up the bottom of the aura where the feet are sticking out. The bottom of the aura is going through the ankle or the middle of the calf. We've disconnected ourselves from the earth. We're trying really hard. You can't actually do it, but we're trying to ignore our connection to the earth. So we pull our field up and squish it in. Try not to let anything touch our aura. And we make really thick pieces of energy on the auric wall, the outer edge, in the front and in the back, right across the face and the chest and the belly. And all the activity on the emotional and mental level, almost all of it for most people is restricted right there. Maybe in the back a little, but it's right here. And we're not using the rest of this energy being, this space of our being. Sometimes there's holes, there's like injuries in the outside of the auric field. And one of the trainings that I had that I gave to a number of my students at different levels is to go to a public place, but not too crowded. And this one student I took in Eugene, a young lady who was recently became single, to this coffee shop. His favorite coffee shop is really great. And there's a fair number of people there. And against the wall in the corner, there was two men at a table. And they were talking away, and they're talking with their hands a lot and very expressive. And the first thing that she noticed energetically and with some of this physical body language too is a little giveaway, that they were not from Eugene, Oregon. They were not from Oregon at all. They were probably not even American. But with the energy, everybody has a signature of where they're from. They carry that in their field, and it radiates out. Definitely European. And it just, the signatures, once you start to notice that kind of thing, it's so dramatic, it's so obvious. And they didn't have a usual type of profession. They're just something really different about them. So we're sitting there trying not to gawk at them, but to observe politely and, to see what they were doing. And they have all this energy. Their fields were way out like a 3-year-old, and above their heads, way, way down below their feet. Especially one of them was even more than the other one. And they used the whole field. They would make these gestures, and talking, and then all this color and energy and the dance of it in their field, and then it would come swooping out of them in all directions like waves, like ocean waves, colors and sparks, light, and the feeling of it. The feeling of it was musical. It was like symphony. And so we sat there and we kept exploring and experiencing and wondering, what is their occupation? Because these people weren't like regular humans at all. They somehow managed to keep this or regain it in their adult life, this being able to experience their wholeness, to experience it and share it with each other. They're sharing it back and forth. And they shared it with the whole place. Most of the people didn't notice, but it did kind of brighten up the energy of the whole room, the whole building there. And finally, after a while, they got up to leave, and we decided it was probably time for us to leave too. And as we're going out the door, they had a lot of big windows there, and they had little posters on the glass. And one of the posters was for the Eugene, Oregon Bach Festival, that the musicians and the composers had already been arriving there and been there for a week or two. And then the performances were going to be in another couple of weeks. But they stay there and work together, and they're composing new pieces of music that they're going to play, and they have all this extraordinary artistic, creative exchange and development together. And that was obvious. The poster even had the same energy on it that the two men did. And it was so glorious with the waves that came out. And these two men, they were at the youngest in their late 30s, maybe more likely somewhere in their 40s. My recently singled woman, my student, I had to keep restraining her, making her stay on her seat. She wanted to get up and go over there and introduce herself and start up some kind of a conversation or relationship, especially with the one with the bigger aura who was the most energetically active, because what he put out was so passionate and so beautiful and so delicious. But we kept her restrained. so that she could have her lesson. And that's a perfect example um, of how somebody uses all of themselves. In our modern culture, as we get older, we're restricting ourselves, we're cutting all this off, we're not letting ourselves be that way, feel that way, experience that way, think that way. And we're all squished, we're shut down. Our activity that's going on in our body is happening right here. It's not a large variety of color or movement. If you look on the spiritual level, for those particular vibrations, frequency groups, nothing's happening and nothing's moving. There might be a solid color in there, but often not. You could feel that there is aliveness, there's energy there, but nothing is happening. They're not using that level of their being at all. It's blank. When I first perceived that, when you perceive it on a spiritual level, you perceive it on an emotional level, you perceive it mentally, often physically, it was such a shock. One minute watching the child or somebody like this musician who's awake and alive and using their whole being and all that passion and creativity and all the love and the beauty and the variation, the diversity, exploring it, feeling it. And you could feel what they're doing because we're all sharing it. And then turning my attention to look at the average American, where none of that is happening. Everything is shut way, way, way down. The level of experience is just so squished, so tightly crammed into a box. And they're totally unaware. They're totally, totally unaware of everything that they're missing. There's a piece of them in their subconscious that knows. And there's always that yearning, that little sense in there that something big and important is missing. But in our modern culture, we work really hard to turn away from that, to cover it up and bury it so we don't have to notice, because that's a very painful thing to notice that in yourself. That was a very big shock, that very first time experiencing that. So why do the ancient cultures and the indigenous cultures, these so-called primitive people, why do they like ceremony? Why do they want ceremony in their life? Why do they deem it some of the most important things that they could possibly do in their life? And they want to make sure that real ceremony is incorporated into their life, often on a daily basis. They have ceremonies that are very short, small, but deep and profound, such as getting up just before the sunrise, watching the sun, honoring the sun, thanking the sun and the sunlight itself, and letting that energy fill your body in this. It's a ceremony of gratitude. of thanks, of experiencing the aliveness of the sun, experiencing the aliveness of the sunlight itself, the visible light, the invisible light, the cosmic energies. A lot of times we think in the modern world of some of those energies that we can't see, they're out of the visible range. We think of them as being, ooh, they're bad, they're deadly, they're going to kill you. Keep them away from you. Well, that's not the way the ancients thought. And it's not the way the indigenous people thought or think. In the proper context, the proper appreciation, proper use within the body, they are food. The Whitakers and the Egyptians always, both of them always said that the sunlight is food, some of our most important food and nutrient for our existence. And we need to experience it. We need to experience it fully on all levels. When we include something like gratitude into a ceremony, a small ritual that is going to be fairly short, like watching the sun come up, the gratitude just tunes you right in to your heart. It tunes you in to your emotions and emotional depth. It allows you to go deeper in the depths of your emotions. And it allows your emotions to integrate with the spiritual level of your activity, to experience it on both of those levels, and to experience it on a physical level, to allow all those different energies to come into your physical body, to fill up all your molecules. It's food. It runs everything. It's the electricity that runs everything. So in that dawn ceremony, there's also the feeling of the earth and the connecting to the earth, feeling your feet on the ground, touching the ground, feeling your energy, your whole energy body, the chakra that is below the feet, the chakras of the feet, to go into the earth, to feel the earth and the earth energy, the magnetic field, the electrons that come up in the magnetic field, that just come right up into your body and fill it up. And there's a whole experience of feeling it, experiencing what it is like to have all of this sunlight, earth energies, electrons coming into your body to soak in to every cell, to soak into every atom, to be nourishing motors. These are the motors that keep things running. Some of the most important nourishment. The ancients are right, the most important nourishment. So that's one kind of a ceremony that is short, it's small, it's not elaborate, but it's all about collecting your attention, getting out of any box that you might have, any of the cultural restraints, preconceived ideas, restrictions, to get out of it completely, send it away, and allow yourself to totally experience on all levels of your being, to allow your auric field to spread out again, to just take a big breath and stop being restricted. So it's been held in by an energetic girdle. So we need to take it off, throw it away, so we can be who we are, what we are, to the fullest, to experience our aliveness to the fullest. That's what ceremony is for. That's what it is, real ceremony. That's what it is meant for so many millennia, so many, many millennia. And from our ancestors, the ancients that came from the stars, who knew these things and lived with those ways of being and ways of life, and they taught it to us. This is a cosmic way of being. When we have a raised consciousness, an expanded consciousness, this allows us to perceive more than we were before. When we are living inside that restricted box, we're all squished in and we're ignoring, not believing in all kinds of the real world. We're restricting, we're cutting ourselves off from who we really are, what we really are, what the world really is, and who everybody, everything out there in the world, who they really are, and what their connectedness really is. And that's lowering our consciousness. When we do that, we are diminishing our consciousness. When we're asleep, we have diminished consciousness. In a sense, we're dumbing ourselves up or out, or just pretending to be something really small and insignificant and really dumb and disconnected. Disconnected, not belonging to anything, anybody, not interacting, just dumb and disconnected, and no way to become connected. Starving. When we're asleep, we're starving. So when we allow ourselves to wake up and allow ourselves to start exploring and experiencing the totality of who and what we are, experiencing things through our entire being, like a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, like those super passionate musicians. And I would imagine many of the people who have lived a spiritual life, a life of meditation and ceremony, that their fields are expanded, that they are able to experience things through the depths of their emotional being and the depths of their spiritual being, the depths of their physicalness and their mental capacity, that they have expanded consciousness that is expanded way beyond the people in our modern world in their little tiny boxes. In our modern culture, we have literally learned how to diminish our consciousness. That's a rather fantastic accomplishment when you think about it. It's astounding, especially when you learn about who and what you really are and what you're capable of, that somebody, especially billions of people, have managed to squish it and pretend it doesn't exist and bury it from themselves. That's astounding. But that's the age that's ending. That's what we've been exploring in the age that is ending. We call that the backwards turning wheel era. And we turn everything backwards and upside down, including our own conscious awareness, and put ourselves to sleep. The Hedicas used to call us the walking dead. And I always thought that was so rude and so gross. But I quickly learned that it's awfully accurate. And just think about that. That's makes for a very surprising realization of what we've done to ourselves in our own culture, our modern culture. So ceremony is to learn how to be awake and stay awake, and to keep getting more awake and more awake and more awake, to learn more and more about the truth of who we are and what we are, the truth of our own song, the breadth, the capacity of our own song, that creativity and the aliveness and the connectedness, and how much experience and connectedness and aliveness and love that we could have, we could experience in the connectedness with everything else. This sunrise ceremony, we're reminding ourselves of how extremely connected we are to everything around us, that everything's alive and conscious and thinking and knowing and experiencing and interacting. The sun is a living thing. The sunlight itself is alive and living and thinking. Earth, everything. That we're consciously turning our attention into experiencing our connectedness to these things, into that field of connectedness, the field of awareness that we are part of. Ceremony brings us back to that. And we have so many more kinds of ceremonies. You can have a ceremony about anything and celebrate. The ceremony is a celebration. There's always an aspect of gratitude in a ceremony, whether it's sunrise or it's a sweat lodge or it's a ceremony of giving birth, birthing a baby, ceremony of reaching a different stage of life, like becoming a teenager, moving into an adulthood. Our modern culture doesn't celebrate that. They actually have a lot of denigration for things like that. But in the ancient societies, in these indigenous societies, well, the table's going to move on its own. In these so-called primitive societies, moving into a different stage of life is really a big deal. It's really important. And it's something noteworthy. It's something to really pay attention to aim our attention at and experience it as fully as possible. What does it mean to no longer be a little kid, but now starting to be an adult? And you have to learn about being an adult in your culture. What does it mean? How do we do it? When we add ceremony, we're continually reminding ourselves that we're not just physical creatures, but we're so much more. And as we go through different stages of our life, we're going to be able to experience that life in more and new and different ways. Ceremony of something like marriage, the ceremony of becoming an elder, ceremony of dying. We have ceremonies for times of the year, how the world around us is changing because the season is changing. And what does that all mean? What does it mean that it is summertime and our crops are all growing and they're coming up to their fullest, and then fall is starting and it's harvest. Things are ready to pick and process, and that's our food. That's the other part of our nourishment, physical food. But it isn't just physical. All these things there's a possibility to experience them with ceremony, experience them with a depth, a spiritual depth, an emotional depth, and a mental depth, and physical depth that we just, in our modern culture, we don't have any concepts of that. Most people don't have any concepts of those things. A lot of indigenous people, like the Hopi out here, not too far from where we live, they don't have piped water. They don't have well water. They're totally dependent on rain, and they do live in a desert. Totally dependent on rain for their crops. Everything about raising their crops is a ceremony. Every step. They collect water, they carry it out, and they give little bits of water to each plant and walk down the row and little bits of water. They're singing. Part of the ceremony involves singing to the plants and the dirt and the water, and to talk to the spirits of the plants and the water and the dirt, and to ask them to come and work together right there in their field and have the plants grow so they have crops, so they have food to feed themselves. Every step of harvest is a ceremony, and they're singing as they harvest, and they're talking with the different plants, with the different spirits, with water, with the land, with the sunlight. They're giving thanks. They're utilizing their entire being with every step. And they're learning more and raising their consciousness more. They're making contact with these other entities, these other songs, the plants, the soil, the water, the spirits that live there, the sunlight, the spirit of the earth itself and its energies that come up. All the spirits that are around in that garden, that like garden things. Some of us might call spirits like that divas. They're utilizing ceremony. And then they have a big ceremony, a big harvest ceremony. They have big planting time ceremonies. They have ceremonies of honoring the nighttime, the sleeping of the cropland in the winter. And these involve dances and ceremonies and praying and talking to all these different spirits in very specific ways, honoring, thanking. And there's exchange. There's exchange of experience and information, energies and love and healing and nourishments. Back and forth between everything, everybody involved in having that garden. All these different spirits, the plants and the dirt and everything. Interaction, connectedness, sharing, giving, receiving. And an important step in all of these ceremonies is that humans learn how to receive. In our modern culture, we don't know much about receiving and receiving these kinds of gifts. We know how to give gifts at Christmas back and forth to each other. And that's a very physical and very linear mental exchange of a gift. But the depths of the giving and the receiving, the depths of information that is shared, the depths of experience that is shared, and love, depths of emotions that are felt and shared and experienced back and forth. Those things are missing from our modern world. And that's what we stay tuned into with ceremony. That's why we need to bring ceremony back into our lives, real ceremony. Bring it back into our lives.
Wow. Thank you again.
It is my honor. Deep, incredible honor to be able to experience these things, to be able to share that information, share the knowledge, the experience with all of you. It is an incredible honor. So I thank you. I thank you all, everybody listening, and Laura and Helmut.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, Kay. Is there any more powerful and effective way to bring this awake aliveness, the understanding and the living of the fullness of our being and the fullness of our life back than ceremony?
We gain it back by starting to do ceremony. That's That's how we learn how to turn our attention to things more than just what is physically around us, and more than just what our linear mind has to think about um, in its current life. And the first ceremony, the easiest ceremony, is to find and feel your song. The ceremony of finding your song and learning how to turn your attention to your song and into your song so that you can experience it. You can feel it on all levels and you can explore it. There's so much to explore in our song. We have so much history. And I mean some serious history. We're so ancient, we're eternal and very vast. And we've been a lot of places in this universe. Lots and lots and lots of places in this universe. We've had all kinds of experiences, lifetimes, you could say, as all sorts of things in this universe. And the memory of it, the knowledge of it, the experience of it is all in your song. It's all there. And the more we explore it, the more we bring those things up to the conscious awareness and into our conscious lives. So starting with the song ceremony, learning who and what you actually are. And I could talk and talk and talk and talk about what song is and what does that mean? What kind of things does it entail? And what does it include? And as you're listening, it's pretty much linear information, linear ideas, somebody else's thoughts and words. But as we learn to wake up, even with hearing my descriptions, becomes a very different experience. My descriptions of what song is. You learn to tune in to feeling that for yourself as I say the words. You experience it as I say the words. We learn from experience. That's the nature of who we are as a song, as an entity, as a physical human being. We learn through experience. Real knowledge, real understanding of things. It comes from experience. And so the song ceremony teaches you how to turn your attention away from just physical things and just linear words to the experience of being alive. To experience your own aliveness, to experience your own consciousness, your own awareness, your connectedness, to experience the connectedness. I could talk forever and describe endlessly things about the connectedness in the field and all the things we're connected to and all the things that get shared. I could talk without stop for days and days and days about it and never say the same thing twice. But you're only going to understand it by experiencing it. You're only going to understand song by experiencing it. So that's why we always say song ceremony. And for the Whitakers, the song ceremony was the very first ceremony taught to tiny kids. And it's the first thing that happens with all the other kind of ceremonies or rituals they have. Begins with song. Begins with song ceremony. Tuning into your song, feeling your song, having your whole awareness filled with the experience of your own song, and then stepping out from there to whatever the ceremony entails, whatever it is you want to experience and learn about. Real learning comes from experience. That's real knowingness. So for their whole lives, the Whitakers, they're always doing song ceremony. And the interesting thing about that, the more you do it, the longer you do it, the more interesting it gets, and the more you actually learn about your own song and what is held there. What is your song, and what are the memories that you hold? Where have you been throughout all these eons? What sort of secrets are hidden in there? We learn it from experience. And the song ceremony teaches us how to experience on all levels, to explore ourselves and explore our universe and our connectedness. It's not hard. It's not cumbersome. It doesn't have to take an entire lifetime. As soon as you do it the very first time, the very first song ceremony, you start to change your consciousness. Your consciousness is expanding with the very first song ceremony. And what you experience there is changing your understanding of things, of yourself, of the world, of the nature of life and the universe. And it just keeps getting better.
But this learning from experience, that's another huge part of all ceremonies, not just the song ceremony. The song ceremony is very important because that becomes the basis. The knowledge of your song and your truth becomes the basis for all ceremonies. But all ceremonies have that aspect of offering you to gain knowledge through experience.
That's the nature of real ceremony. And we learn how to have real ceremony by starting with the song ceremony and learning what that has to teach us, and learning how to collect our attention and aim it, to focus it where we choose in the moment. Say we're having a garden ceremony because we want to do things with our soil and get it all fixed to plant the seeds, and we want to start that whole thing. So we want to take a lesson from the Hopis and have a ceremony while we are doing the task of preparing the soil and planting the seeds and watering them. That gives us an opportunity. There's the stage is set. You have an opportunity to experience your song as it is doing these tasks, while your wholeness, your totality is doing this task in the garden, and you are interacting with the garden itself, the spirit of the garden, and the soil, and the seeds, and the different plants, and the bugs, and the birds and other creatures. And what other kinds of plants are around you? The air, the sunlight, the water, the land, the energy of the land coming up. All of it You can be in ceremony the entire time that you are doing that task with the soil and the seeds and the planting, and learn to start feeling the connectedness. Learn to feel the presence of all these other things that are alive. They're alive and conscious. They're full of love and knowledge, and they want to share with you. Give and take, give and receive. They want to share with you. And every time we do that, we're expanding our consciousness. Every time we are engaging in any ceremony like that, where we're purposefully reaching out with our awareness to feel our whole song, ourselves, to identify with ourselves, with our song, and to reaching out to experience the connectedness, that field of connectedness that we live in, that is so alive and so vibrant and is such a highway for all these things, all this information and knowledge and sharing. Every time we engage, we learn more, we expand more, we can experience things deeper, more thoroughly, deeper. There's always something more to learn. Just because we've planted things 100 times, it doesn't mean that there's nothing left to learn about it. The learning about it is endless. Learning about ourselves and our universe is endless. It just keeps getting more intriguing and more interesting and more fun.
Okay, that was one full talk, eh? Real quick before we do questions, if you want to join any of our upcoming ceremonies next year, small and huge, we have a link for that. Go to katasee.world. That's KATASEE.WORLD/ceremonies. And you can sign up to receive information about what's coming up. So, Laura, do you have?
I have a question, but am I allowed?
Absolutely.
Okay. We talked a lot about single ceremonies, or where to start and doing the small ceremonies. What happens when you is there a significance when you do it as a group versus just yourself? Is there something different that happens? Oops, you're muted.
There you go. There is indeed. When we do it ourselves, we are generating a certain amount of energy and attention and power and focus, consciousness, the connectedness in the field. And as soon as we add another person, it doesn't just double, it starts to multiply. It gets bigger. And there's so many more things that are happening that are part of the connectedness. So many more things. Another whole human consciousness song is participating. And so everything around you is interacting with sharing with you and the second person. And you and the second person are sharing back and forth, and it's just goes on and round and round, and it just grows. And the field grows with intensity and complexity. It grows with power, with love, information, with everything. You add a third person, it's not 3 times, it's many, many, many times. And the more people you add, the more it grows that way. It just compounds.
So everybody come on and join us this next year. I can promise an amazing time, life-changing time. That's exciting. This has been fabulous information. Thank you.
Thank you. When you have something that you want to accomplish, a task that you want to accomplish, and you want to do it with people, a bunch of people collected together. An example would be the weaving ceremonies that we do, where we invite as many people as want to come, more the better, and that makes the results more powerful. With the weaving ceremony, we are literally working with the web of life of the planet Earth and all humanity and all life on the planet. And because our planet Earth web is not disconnected and isolated from all the rest of the web of the galaxy or the universe, it is connected. What we do does reach out even farther than our planet, but we're concentrating on the issues of our planet. And the web of life, this is the blueprint. This is where everything happens first. In the spiritual teachings, energy comes first. If you're trying to make a physical body, the blueprint, the energy blueprint comes first. And the physical follows the blueprint. The DNA follows the blueprint. And it builds out from there. So everything that we are, everything that we do, everything that we think and feel, it has substance. It has existence. And it has influence. So here we are, 7.5 billion, more probably now, humans on our planet, thinking away and feeling emotionally and doing their thing. We're co-creating what happens on the planet. We're co-creating our society. We're co-creating all these problems that we have. Some of them are pretty nasty, pretty big problems. We have co-created this. So in working with the web, as people are just living, existing, they're doing their thing the way they have been doing it, they change the blueprint. They change the web, that web of life. They add their beliefs in there. They add their prejudices in there. They add their love in there. Everything becomes part of the web. So when we work on healing the web of life of our planet and everything on it, we are working to heal all of the things that are disruptive, that are negative, dysfunctional, that disrupt other parts of the web, that destroy things. We work together in healing processes to clean that up and restore the blueprint with things that are healthy and productive and healthy for all. The more people you have, like I said a minute ago, the more profound, the more intense, and the more powerful the field that you create. And as we are working together with our minds all on the same thing, the same task, that is a huge amount of power that can change the web. So that's what the weaving ceremonies are all about, to change the web, and everything physical falls in place. It falls in line from what is in the blueprint. So that is an example of a big ceremony, which so far we've had 2 days, 2 whole long days in a row doing the ceremony. And there's a lot to it. And it's incredibly beautiful. It's incredibly beautiful. And never ceases to surprise me and astound me what comes up and what happens and what kind of changes are there. And sometimes in the physical we see a reflection of it being manifested in the physical. So that's an example of a bigger ceremony for bigger purposes. There is no limit, really. The limit is our imagination and our level of consciousness.
Okay. katase.world/ceremonies if you want to get information and join our ceremonies that we have coming up next year, big or small. Questions. Let's take questions. If you have questions, just put them. There's a Q&A tab at the bottom of your window. You can put it in there. Sai shared something. Before I get to that, Laura, do you have anything else?
No, I'm good. I just want more ceremonies, and I just want more people to sign up and join us. They're amazing. And I want to feel more of that exponential, what was our last one? 16 people?
I think it was 18, 20 with us.
Yeah, gosh, more. Because it was fantastic, and it did roll out onto my place and my farm, and I could see it in a very linear, tangible way. I want more.
Very interestingly, with this weaving ceremony that we had very recently, we had a physical in-house component. There were as many people as we could fit in our little house to do a ceremony like this. And then a whole lot of people were online doing the ceremony in their own home, online. We're all connected, we could all see each other with the same technology here. We could all see and hear and connect with each other. It was amazing. The distance, with energy things, distance is not an issue. Hattika used to tell me, distance is not an issue. And they were teaching me how to do healings, physical energy healings, like to physically heal another human or animal, plant. At first, that just it puzzled my linear mind. My linear mind wanted to think that I had to be in the room with somebody. I should probably be touching them. I mean, shouldn't you be touching physically? And that's not the way it works. The spiritual energies, the healing, it works outside of time and space. So as we work with learning our song and learning about our connectedness, about the universe, the truth of the universe, about what real healing is, how that all works and happens. Space means nothing. Time means nothing. It all works outside of time and space. Consciousness, with our connectedness to the entire universe, it works outside of time and space. We are instantly connected to whatever's happening on the absolutely farthest side of the universe from us. Instant. It's instant. And that's an extremely profound phenomenon. Your linear mind can think about that for a long time and twist itself around a lot to try to figure out what on earth that means and how that could happen. But when you do it, when you physically experience it, it makes sense. It's obvious. It makes sense. It's, of course. Even our radionics, the bowl, the red door bowl, that healing technology, it works outside of time and space. It's instantaneous. Doesn't matter where somebody is, even another planet. Doesn't matter. It's absolutely instantaneous. And when you experience that, it's obvious. It's like, well, yeah, of course. It has to be. It has to be instantaneous. So that's how our ceremonies work as well. It's everything that is truly spiritual works that way. Because it's multidimensional. It's multidimensional. When we think in real linear physical matter terms, it's linear, and you have to move in space from point one and move all the way through to point B, and you have to go through the space, and it takes time. And when you involve the rest of your being and the rest of the universe, then time and space are not a limiting factor. They're there and they're part of it, but they're not a limiting or controlling factor at all. It's what's outside of time and space that has a controlling potential. And that has to do with our consciousness.
Thanks again, Kay. There's a couple of comments from Sai. She's doing ceremony in Costa Rica, and she says this was very powerful and gentle, your explanation. And thank you again. And she's going to share it with people who have been to her thing. And
excuse me, did you say Sai?
Yeah.
From Costa Rica?
Yeah. And she also says that this talk brought all I do in sacred clay to a deeper level. So all the ceremonies, beautiful. And Polly, love you guys. This has been amazing. Bye for now. And there's a question on Facebook and the mentorship from Dana. Is there a difference to you between ceremony and ritual, or do you consider them the same?
That's semantics. That's what you're getting into linear word definitions. For the ancients, the indigenous who practice real ceremony, ritual is just another word for ceremony, and they really mean the same thing. When we get into modern culture and how they've started to use these particular words, for some people they do mean things that are slightly different. But they're not talking about the kind of ceremony that we've just been talking about. They're talking about modern, linear, 3D time space, modern culture definitions.
And, oops. And James says hi. Hi, James. And Jennifer loves the story of passion and expression. That's so unusual, Jennifer. That's beautiful. Okay. I think there's another question. Do you want to do that, Laura?
Sure. Asta, in some ceremonies, Asta asks, in some ceremonies, people dance and sing. The whole body is involved in movement. In some ceremonies, they leave the body and travel, while in other ceremonies, they stay in the body. Are these methods meant for specific kind of ceremonies? Thank you so much. Love and song, Asta.
These are our language just starts to fail us. Well, when we say things like this is a different kind of ceremony, it's true in some ways, but then the words can also evoke different ideas and meanings, and people jump to conclusions about things. What she described is these are obviously different ceremonies. Somebody sitting or laying down, leaving their body, they're doing a ceremony, they're journeying to something for a specific purpose. That's a ceremony. That's involving all aspects of your being. And dancing, getting up, dancing, singing, having music, being part of what is happening, that's a ceremony. It's conducted very differently, and it has different aspects and components to it. And it can involve taking your physical body with its operations and its chemistries into the ceremony itself, altering them, altering your immediate brain chemistry, the endorphins levels, human dopamine levels, serotonin, the opiate levels that your brain makes and the other cells in your body can make. This is fully involving the physical in with the mental and the emotional and the spiritual, to meld them together, to experience them together as one. This little child that I was talking about, and this the men in the restaurant. When you look at the different levels, I hate that word to use that because it's so divisive, but we actually do have a slightly different frequency ranges between physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual activity. It's an activity in our body, our field. And when you're able to tune in and watch each of those different levels just one at a time, like with the two men, sometimes it would start in their emotional level and maybe start at the heart or the solar plexus or the two together, and then just well up and just encompass the whole body, and all the chakras are going and the whole field is going, and all levels are being utilized. But that one moment that started with a activity and experience in the emotional, as an emotional experience, and it quickly became mental and spiritual and physical. Sometimes so fast you can't see the when one started, if it was one after the other or they were all just blooming at once. But when you're looking at each one separately, they're doing a particular movement with the energy, the color, light, the sparkles, shapes. And you look at, say you're looking at the emotional first, and it's got the certain colors and activity. Then you look at the mental, and in the same place, it's doing something similar. It's joining the dance. And it moves out from there. Sometimes slowly, you can really see them one boom, boom after the other. Some, it seems like it's all at once. But there's a participation on each of these levels with the experience. They're not separating out an experience to feel it, to experience it just at, say, the spiritual level by itself, leaving out the others. It's integrated. It's all happening at once. It's integrated. Same with that little child. It's doing the same kind of thing. When we look at a modern culture person who is asleep in their box, they will have a mental activity or an emotional activity that happens first, and then the other one will kind of join in. Sometimes it's very dominant of one over the other. And sometimes you can see it's moving into the, engaging the physical with it. No spiritual level activity. So we get really, really, really tied down and distracted and confused by our linear modern culture words and those concepts and the belief systems that go with those concepts. Every time we use those words, we're dredging up the thought form of them with the whole belief system that goes with them. And when we're talking about this kind of stuff, our language isn't built for it. and it can get really confusing. So what we're working for is this integration, this waking up, utilization of our whole self on all levels, this integrated activity where maybe we started with a thinking of something and it dredged up the emotion with it, with that sort of dredged up the spiritual expanse of it, the connectedness of it, maybe the physical experience of it. So when we're thinking about ceremony and these different types of ceremonies, something like the dancing with the singing, they have an opportunity to engage other parts of ourselves that in our modern culture we really leave out a lot. Dance and singing in a spiritual way can bring about some very deep trance level states and very profound experience. So they're all good. They're all good, they're all fun, and I want more.
Okay, last question from Jennifer. Busting up the assumption about how a ceremony is supposed to be. Can you talk about the balance between reverence and expansiveness?
Can you repeat the last half of that and move your...
Well, I made a bit of a joke earlier.
Okay, so I'm hearing several different voices at once, and so I'm trying to understand the words that Helmut is saying, and I'm relying on seeing his lips as well, but he had them all covered.
So I made a bit of a joke earlier in response to Jennifer's comment, and she said ceremonies don't need to be serious, which to her feels constricting. So she says, busting up the assumption about how a ceremony is supposed to be. Talk about the balance between reverence and expansiveness.
The balance between reverence and expansiveness.
Start over, you were muted.
Balance between reverence and expansiveness. Okay, from my understanding of what Helmut just said, I feel that there is an inclusion for you in your language usage that the reverence is somehow constrictive. It's somehow creating rules or a box or something like that. And the expansiveness would be something more free action, free direction. Am I correct with that?
Let's go with that assumption.
I need the reply. So Jennifer,
in our Western definition of ceremony, I feel the implication of seriousness. And how Kay is talking about ceremony, there's so much joy.
With our modern culture, we approach things that are supposed to be important with seriousness. The Whitakers used to call that morbidly serious, and that is very restrictive. you're just still in a box. You're creating another box, and usually with that kind of thing, you got a lot of rules, you got a lot of shoulds and don'ts and have tos and supposed tos. With the Whitaker's way and the pre-dynastic Egyptian way, that kind of restrictedness, it just doesn't exist. There just aren't very many supposed tos whatsoever, or have tos, and the few that might be there to just kind of create an order of a couple of steps to take to perform the certain type of ceremony. They're not written in stone. They're guidelines. And the idea of being out of the box and living your song and owning, listen to that word, owning your song, owning who you are, that your song is your identity. When we're living that with all of that incredible expansiveness and freedom and the connectedness with everything else, and that whole field of connectedness and how unrestricted that is. And that is an exquisite dance of interaction and sharing. And there are no shoulds and there is no restriction. It just is, and anything is good, is okay, is part of the dance, is all beautiful. When we're able to allow ourselves that kind of freedom, that level of freedom to expand and explore and experience, just pure experience, that is incredibly joyful. There's so much joy in being awake, in knowing who you are, feeling and experience who and what you are, and who and what everything else is. And its aliveness and all the love that's there, and all the passion, the creativity, the passion, the sharing. There's just huge joy is there. And that becomes a way of life. Living that relaxed freedom with joy and passion and creativity and exploration is a way of life. It's a way of being. Currently, our modern culture has learned how to be restricted and living in a box full of lies, pretending to be totally disconnected, isolated, and abandoned. That's a horrible place to be. And we create that for ourselves in the modern culture. That's the upside down, backwards turning wheel. And that's what we're moving out of. The world that we are moving towards is the world of freedom. It's the world that we create ourselves based on song and awakeness and connectedness, consciousness, expanding consciousness. It's always, always more to expand, the consciousness to learn, to grow. There's always more. And there's just such big joy to that. It's so beautiful. It feels so good. Yeah, that's free and loose and unrestricted and full of joy. I hope that helps.
Okay, beautiful. On that note, we're going to close out. We went past 2 hours again. Okay, if you want to join us for future ceremonies, big, small, incredible ceremonies, katasa.world/ceremonies. And thank you for joining. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Helmut. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And it is such a delight and a joy and fun to do this, to share with you as much as I possibly can. And it's such a privilege, it's such an honor. So I thank you. I thank you all. Have a very beautiful day.
Love you.
And I love you.
Love you guys.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.